You'll be able to hear the full interview. That's on 5 Live Breakfast tomorrow morning with Rachel and Rick. I want to bring in Saj Sadiq, editor of Pack Passion, a cricket website. Great to have you with us, Saj. You're very welcome.
Good evening, thank you.
You heard a little bit of Azeem Rafiq there, and of course, you know, that gripping testimony yesterday. It was so hard to turn away from it as it was sad to listen to it. I'm curious what your thoughts were afterwards, particularly that bit about whether it might, actually be a catalyst for change.
Well, I think first and foremost, Azeem deserves a lot of credit and praise for the strength, excuse me, and the determination that he's shown in this whole affair. Catalyst for change, I think it can only be a catalyst of change if those who have the responsibility and have that are in the corridors of power within English cricket really want to make those changes and are determined to make those changes, because ultimately we can all come and speak on radio programs, we can all see various statements from the ECB, various statements from cricket clubs up and down the country, but the powers that be within English cricket are the real people who can make those changes and need to make those changes.
You see, I find that really interesting, and I was thinking about this yesterday. I was like, what is this reminding me of? And for me, I think listening to Azeem, it harkened back to the Me Too movement, and there were women that came forward with their experiences of what they had lived through, and that had become acceptable behaviour from the powers that be at that time in Hollywood, but then as we saw spread out to, of course, lots of different industries and lots of different societies around the world. And even though those that were at the centre of it, for example, Harvey Weinstein, who was the Hollywood producer who was initially mentioned, and his case went ahead, etc., but it was really that it did create a sea change about what was acceptable. It was like, even if the powers that be want to remain in that old guard, the people who have been affected, that have these stories, that have lived through it, are not going to accept it anymore, because their experience has been voiced and has been heard, be it on radio shows or in newspapers or conversations around the dinner table.
Yes, and those voices do need to be heard. Excuse me, and those voices have to keep telling their stories. They have to keep explaining what actually happened, because over the years what's happened is this has been going on for too long, and those voices have been brushed under the carpet. Mm-hmm. Those voices have been ignored. We've heard stories of where young cricketers have gone to their coaches, their senior players, complaining about incidents, and those responses that they received were things like, you need to toughen up, or yes, we'll deal with it, we'll look into it, and nothing ever happened. And I think it's about time now that there was change, but those voices, I mean, at the moment there's still far too many cricketers or ex-cricketers that I know that are reluctant to speak up for fear of reprisals. There are players who are taking their coaching badges. There are players that want to become umpires, mm-hmm. who are still reluctant to speak up because they fear that if they do speak up, they'll be taken off those courses, they might not get their coaching badges. So I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
In a sense of, yes, being ostracised within whatever industry that might be. And I think it has parallels with Hollywood as well, as people had, to of course be an actress or to be working within the film industry and didn't want to speak up. Tell me about you, because I was reading there are recent experiences that you've also had.
Yes, a sad state of affairs, really. I mean, I've been an accredited journalist for 12, 13 years now, travelling up and down the country, reporting on county cricket and international cricket. And previously, there's been the occasional incident here and there that you sort of, you use the phrase brush under the carpet, really. Mm-hmm. And you ignore that, you move on, you go to the next game, you meet some wonderful people, and it's out the system. However, this time it was a lot different. I went to 4 different venues during the England versus Pakistan series, as I say, as an accredited journalist, and there were incidents at every single one of those venues. And there were ugly incidents. There were incidents that could have been avoided. I mean, for example, I went to one of the grounds, and as an accredited journalist, I received a parking permit, a parking pass to enter the car park. And as soon as I went towards the car park, a car parking attendant was shouting, "Turn your car around. You can't park in here," without even asking me whether I was permitted to park in there, whether I was a journalist. Immediately when he saw me, he assumed that this gentleman shouldn't be parking in this car park. I approached him, I showed him my press pass, I showed him the email that proved that I had a parking spot within that car park. And he turned around and said to me, "Oh, anybody could make one of those passes. It looks fake to me." I actually thought he was joking because I smiled, I laughed, and sort of played along with the joke initially. But then when I looked at him, he was actually being serious. And that is just one of a number of incidents. I mean, eventually he let me through into the car park. There was another incident at one of the grounds where there was you had to have COVID-19, a negative test on your phone via email or a text. I had that information on my phone, and the steward there wouldn't let me through. He said that no, that's not acceptable. Told me to stand on one side whilst others were allowed in. And I had a look, and those individuals were of a different ethnicity to myself. They were showing exactly the same information that I was on their phones, and they were allowed to enter the ground. Now, that to me clearly tells me that there's a problem, not just on the field, but also off the field as well.
But when you say off the field, do you feel it's within the environment of cricket, or you're talking about society at large? I mean, it's always that question, isn't it, Saj? Like whether it's just a reflection of what's happening in day-to-day life.
Well, within cricket, it's, as I say, on the field, off the field, boardrooms, within dressing rooms, within the stands, within press boxes. So it's not just about what's happening within one aspect of cricket or within one part of the environment. Away from cricket, I think there's a huge problem regarding society and racism. I mean, my own example, I can give you countless examples where I've encountered racism. It's sad, really, because people should be a lot more mature. I was out for a run a few months ago, and a couple of gentlemen in their, I would say, probably late 30s, early 40s, called me the P word for no reason at all. I don't know these people at all. I stopped because it made me angry. I turned around and asked them why they'd said that to me. And like a couple of sheepish schoolboys, they blamed each other. One of them said, "Oh, he said it," and the other one said, "He said it." Again, out walking, somebody rolled the window down, shouted the P word again. I just don't understand it. Well, what is going on with society where they feel the need to behave like this?
It's very difficult. I mean, listening to that you're going through that, I was going to ask you about your upbringing, but and how you experienced it growing up. But I can hear you're experiencing this over the past few months, and this is the shocking part to me. Also, going back to Azeem Rafiq, a lot of the instances he was talking about were from 2017, for example. I mean, what would you like to see happen, just briefly in our last minute?
I think what needs to be done is we need to have more people of colour within boardrooms. We need to have more people of colour scouting young cricketers, because Azeem has mentioned this in his testimony, that the lack of Asian cricketers coming through the system. There are so many playing cricket with wonderful talents at schoolboy level in the parks, but they just don't make it to that high level. The biggest problem being that the scouts, the coaches, the clubs, they already have ideas about Asian cricketers. They're predetermined. They already have these thoughts about these Asian cricketers and whether there'll be trouble if they do sign them on. Those types of things, as I say, within the coaching setup, within boardrooms, at the highest level, and at ground level, and at grassroots level, we need more people of ethnicity working.
working in those jobs. You give a lot of food for thought. Saj Sadiq, who is the editor of Pack Passion cricket website, has been writing a lot, of course, about Azeem Rafiq. Thanks so much for joining us on Drive, Saj. I do want to just read a response from the ECB. This is to Saj's claims from this summer at some of the grounds. He says, we can confirm that we received and explored Mr. Sadiq's complaint. As part of that process, we wrote to all of the venues and shared the feedback and findings with him. We're very aware that his experiences were not acceptable. We're really sorry that he felt uncomfortable and that he was placed in situations that he should not have been. We would like to thank him for bringing his complaint to us so that we can raise these issues with the venues as part of their end of season reviews and work with them to educate and to train staff. You're listening to Drive with Tony and Nuala. It is 18:34.